Hello everyone, welcome back to the College Football Corner podcast. Jersey Joe Archino here. Normally we would be in studio, but today this is going to have to do. Obviously, we did have a split set when we were in there on Sunday. Kevin Walsh going with the Clemson Tigers, and I was rolling with the Tide in the biggest game of the season. And look, I think when you look at this game, it was an incredible one. I mean, the ratings, as they're coming in this morning, weren't outstanding. I thought maybe that might be the case. You have two Southern football teams, two big Southern football teams, so there's not as much of an interest. Overall, the college football playoffs, the ratings have been down this season. So, and let's be honest, we've seen Alabama in this situation many, many times, and it's just another step in the legacy of Saban, another thing that puts him on top of the mountain as one of the greatest of all time. And now we're starting to get into that discussion of, is he the greatest of all time? But that is a discussion for another day. More focusing on the game from last night. I mean, I think I have to give a special shout out to Jay Coker, because all season I really thought, like, when kept saying, I mean, it's worrying me. I think it's going to come to a point where he's going to screw things up for Alabama. And for the most part this season, they didn't really give him a lot of opportunities. They wanted to keep the ball and make sure it was more of a game managing situation for him. Just kind of set up the offense, let Derrick Henry do his thing, and the defense will help us ride out these games. But aside from that opening 50-yard touchdown run from Henry, Clemson really stopped him cold. I mean, Clemson has an outstanding defense. They have a terrific front seven, which a lot of people really gave a lot of credit and acknowledgement to. But you really saw Derrick Henry in that game, and he was not that big of a factor. Jay Coker, in the two games that mattered the most, against Michigan State and against the Clemson Tigers last night, was at his best. He was phenomenal. Now, O.J. Howard helped things out tremendously as well. As soon as McKenzie was out of that game for Clemson, it was a big difference maker. But I think you look at Howard, and he wasn't that big of a difference maker in the season. Clearly, that's a big part of Alabama's offense being the way it is. Jay Coker is not a guy who's going to have a lot of explosive plays for the most part when you have a guy like Derrick Henry who runs the ball the way he does. But in that game last night, the biggest plays, which were somewhat breakdowns, but I still think you have to give Lane Kiffin the credit for calling those plays when he did. And obviously, Jay Coker's got to put the ball where it needs to be, and O.J. Howard finished things off with those two connecting them. But O.J. Howard was phenomenal. Again, with Jay Coker, with O.J. Howard, in the two biggest games that mattered the most, they stepped up dramatically, and I think it's such a testament, because I was really screaming at the TV at points, because you're looking at this game, and there was clearly a significant mismatch. Every single time Alabama went to O.J. Howard, there was clearly a mismatch there. Clemson could not properly cover him, and it made you question, because there was a lot of times in this game, and Kirk Herbstreit mentioned it, where they were kind of being put into bad field situations, because Alabama works at its best when it has the short field, and a lot of times in the game, they were kind of set back on 1st and 10 because Derrick Henry couldn't get anything off the initial run. Because look, that Clemson that front seven is very difficult to run against. But I think Lane Kiffin deserves a tremendous amount of credit for his play calling in this game. You have to, and I think we look at some other teams. We look at Ohio State this year. One of the reasons they were able to pull off that upset and beat Alabama last year and then beat the Oregon Ducks is because of efficient play calling, switching things up, keeping the other team off balance. And I think timely play calling means as much as anything in college football. And Lane Kiffin has done an outstanding job of that, taking a guy like Jay Coker, who wasn't always necessarily the most explosive quarterback, and putting him in the right place. I mean, Jay Coker completely changed as a quarterback. His poise, his command, you saw him yelling and just getting really fiery. That is a different quarterback than what we saw from the earlier stages of the season, where even his role as the starter was uncertain at times. But Jay Coker, Lane Kiffin, you have to give them all the credit in the world. And now we shift a little bit to the blueprint, because I think that is what Alabama is. It is a blueprint. This was the fourth time Saban was here competing for the biggest trophy imaginable, and he walks away one more time with another trophy. In Alabama, I've said it all along, they have a blueprint that is very difficult to stop. It just really is. It's the conservative quarterback elevated by the superior running back and a top-tier defense. But that has also shifted a little bit the last couple of years. I mean, you look at these games, and even though they were on the losing end last year, that was more of an offensive shootout. Nick Saban kind of had to shift and bring in a guy like Kiffin because he sees where the game is going. He knows his defense isn't always going to be there for him at all times, and that was clearly the point at points of that game last night. The defense wasn't always there. They did get worn down by that tremendous offense of Clemson, and Deshaun Watson just had a phenomenal game. He really did. There was just times where he just could not be stopped. But I think you look at the way that this offense went with a guy like Coker, and we go and we look collectively at the last couple. I mean, you had a guy like Greg McElroy winning one of them, you had A.J. McCarron winning two of them, and then you had Jay Coker winning the fourth one. But all of those guys, I mean, McElroy had Ingram, you look at McCarron, he had Richardson, you look at last year's team, what they kind of had, and then this year you have a guy who's so superior like Derrick Henry. It's that same blueprint each time. It's that conservative quarterback, it's that superior running back, and the two of them mesh so well together. But I still think you've got to give so much credit. Now, a lot of people are saying, look, Clemson had their breakdowns, and that's true. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge what Lane Kiffin did, putting Jay Coker in great situations, and you have to give credit to Jay Coker for finishing off those plays. But I mean, now it all shifts to Nick Saban, where he kind of stands on the grand hierarchy of greatest of all times. He has the championship he won with LSU. He has 4 of them with Alabama, so 5. And Colin Cowherd, I was listening to him this morning, and he said he thinks that this has been the greatest run in college football history because of where the game is now, how prominent it is. And he used a good point. I mean, he was saying that, look, you look at a school like Duke, you look at a school like Kentucky, and the resources that they put into those things. Now, these are traditional basketball schools who used to never care or give a rip about college football. But the amount of money and attention and interest there is now in college football, it's a meaningful investment to have good football programs, meaningful and relevant football programs, and that makes the recruiting battle even more difficult. But that is something that Nick Saban's always been able to come out on the receiving end and be at the best of the best at, is winning those recruiting classes. You look at the last couple, he's on top each and every single time, and it's not always with quarterback like we've been saying, but positional players always getting those great superior offensive linemen, getting those tremendously big linebackers, and those defensive linemen, skill position players. You look at guys like Amari Cooper, even O.J. Howard, who has been quiet for the most part, was the number 1 recruited tight end when he was coming into college football. They're always able to get all these terrific offensive players. And now, look, a lot of talk is now shifting to, is Saban ever going to now still kind of go and be baited to go into the NFL? And I just don't know. I don't think he would, based on what he has right now with Alabama. I mean, you look at what he can do. He probably could still win another at least one more at Alabama. I mean, he is getting up there in age, but I remember an interview, and it's very telling. He said, as long as I can continue to play golf, I don't see there's any reason why I can't keep on coaching. And he's a guy who's in very good shape. And look, even a guy like Tom Coughlin in the NFL, he's 70 years old, but he still wants to coach. This is what guys like them love to do. They just keep moving on to the next challenge, the new year, reloading. If it's what you love to do, then it really just continues to help you get up each day and want to do it even more. But the Alabama Crimson Tide winning the national championship, and I thought it was a phenomenal game. I think you look at both sides of the ball. Deshaun Watson, I don't know if I ever had a superior feeling about Clemson all year, but if you ever had any doubts about how good Deshaun Watson was, that game last night proved it all, how good he is. He competed to the end, and you look at how much better he can get next season. Already how much he improved this season from the last one with his throwing. If he could get better, even better standing in the pocket, we know how he can create something out of nothing. He's going to be a special quarterback, but the special team won that game last night. It was a superior one. It was a great one to watch. Alabama, the champions of college football this year. But that is going to do it for this segment. You can catch all of our stuff on NorthAvenueNation.com. Check out our YouTube. It's Joe Archino. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Archino, and we'll be back next time.